Welcome to the West Indies Cricket Development Academy TV, as we are bringing you the match analysis of the first ODI between the West Indies and Sri Lanka that Sri Lanka went on to win. The West Indies, unfortunately, their innings ended at 38.3 overs because of rain interruption, and so their innings end at 38.3 overs, 185 for the loss of four. Sri Lanka, in their reply after a revised target by Duckworth Lewis, um, Stern system after 31.5 overs, they made 234 for 5. They had 37 overs to get 232, and they would have done it with some overs to spare. Um, so the West Indies losing the first ODI against Sri Lanka in the three-match series going down in the first game. I have with me the Cricket Hall of Fame Honorary Secretary, Mr. Dale Brown. He's a fellow journalist as well, and I have Cricket Hall of Famer, Mr. Dennis Eat, with us as well. He's also a fellow journalist, and we are meeting with this abbreviated show to revisit the West Indies' first ODI and their defeat to Sri Lanka earlier today. So the West Indies again, their innings was unfortunately cut short by rain. Rain fell for 2 hours straight, and they made 185 for 4 of 38.3 overs. Sri Lanka replying 234 for the last of 5 after 31.5 overs. They had 37 overs to get the target of 232 that was revised by Duckworth Lewis Stern method. Sri Lanka did it, and they now 1-0 up in the three-match series. Honorary Secretary Mr. Dale Brown, your thoughts on West Indies' defeat to Sri Lanka earlier today?
Greetings to everyone, and thank you, Mr. Codlin, and greetings to Mr. Heath for having me here today, and Mr. Heath especially for joining me as a panelist. Today's game was unfortunate in that it was, of course, interrupted by rain, and that caused the DLS to come into play, which some persons may think it's fair or unfair. But regardless of that, West Indies had to recover from a very, very slow start from their batsmen. We had problems rotating the strike, getting singles. We ate up too many dot balls. It sounds like a familiar theme, but that is what happened. And Rutherford, whom we had heard had been injured and we did not expect him to play, well, he did and had one of his better knocks. Without him, I don't know where we would have gone in this game. He did very, very well in partnership with the much maligned Ruston Chase. So between the two of them, that unbroken partnership of 85 runs was extremely vital to West Indies putting up a it was not decent score, because you need in the one day to score closer at least to 6 runs per over. We thought maybe they would get to 275 or 280 if rain had not interrupted, but it is what it is. The bowling West Indies bowling was again not up to par, just simply not up to par. We bowled on the same track, and the Sri Lankan batsmen, handled our bowlers quite easily. Although we got early wickets between Alzari Joseph and Moti. But the bowling in the middle overs was not, again, not up to par, with Seals very disappointing, and Seals and Walsh, those two were extremely disappointing. The others were marginal, above Dari got those two early wickets. So we have to say he was on par, as was Rust and Chase. So those are my early impressions.
Yeah. Mr. Eid, Hall of Famer, your reaction to West Indies' defeat to Sri Lanka today?
Well, greetings to you, Mr. Codlin, and of course, fellow panelist Dale Brown. And a warm welcome to listeners, viewers, wherever you are in the world, listening to the West Indies Cricket Development Academy TV program. Today, West Indies had an opportunity coming off the T20 to attempt to settle a score, that is the score of revenge or avenge for the defeat in the T20s. Unfortunately, that was not to be, because Sri Lanka, they carried on right where they left off with the T20 affair. The team was not entirely the same, but nonetheless, the players who came in performed just as efficiently as the T20 squad. Now, it's very interesting that West Indies won the toss and decided to bat first, although I know Sri Lanka indicated that the captain of Sri Lanka indicated that he would have been quite happy to bat first as well. Now, let's give credit to Sri Lanka. Their bowlers, they had at least 4 spin bowlers in their attack, and those were very efficient in their task. For example, we had spin bowler Lineage was probably one of the medium pacer, but Welalage, his economy rate in 7 overs was 2.8. Hasaranga's economy rate was 3 for the 2 wickets, 18 runs. Van der Sey, his economy rate was 5.29, and Asalanka 1 wicket for at 5.6. Those numbers, those economy rates, kept the West Indies batters in check. And although they had a brisk start in the first 4 overs or so, where approximately 30 plus runs or 40 runs had been scored, right after that, the wickets started to fall for the West Indies, and King, Athanaze, and Carty struggled somewhat. King and Athanaze. Carty came in, put his head down, and he played some wonderful defensive and attacking shots. But unfortunately, he succumbed to the fact that they were slow in the opening overs. He went for the big one, which was impossible for him to do 2 in a row, a one-handed, left-handed shot to deep long off. And the first one ended up as a 6. The second one pulled out right in the exact same spot. Shai Hope came in, and of course, West Indian Hope did rise somewhat, because they expected Hope, with his average of 50, to perform something specific and take West Indies out of the doldrum. However, it was not to be. He was leg before in a really magnificent bowling, and he was out leg before wicket for the loss of 5 runs, scoring. Van der Sey was the bowler. Rutherford came in, and he played a very cautious innings, over 82 balls, and scored what can only be seen as another vintage Rutherford innings of 74 runs, 82 balls. And he was ably assisted by Ruston Chase, who found some of the form that he established in the last CPL that was played here. And between them, they had scored a partnership of, I think it was about 100 runs to put West Indies up to 185 for 4 until the rains came. Now it was turned for the spectators to sit on their hands and wait and watch and count. And for 3 hours, we noted no play was possible. When they came back, it was the Duckworth-Lewis Stern method that caused Sri Lanka to make 234 runs in 38 overs. Now, those of us who have not followed closely Duckworth-Lewis Stern method of calculation will find it very disturbing to see that the team batting second was forced to score a lot more runs than the team batting first had scored. And the question of the Duckworth-Lewis Stern suggests that the basic principle is that each team is limited over match, has 2 resources available with which to score runs: overs to play and wickets remaining. And the target is adjusted proportionately to the change in the combination of these 2 resources. So basically, once the numbers, including overs batted, overs bowled, wickets in hand, were used in the calculation, a mathematical formula which had been derived by Duckworth-Lewis Stern, we found that Sri Lanka was forced to score a lot more. Nonetheless, they went to their task with direct and what one could say considerable aplomb. They did not flinch, and Sri Lanka carried on right where they left off with the T20, where we saw Madushka, 77 runs in 71 deliveries, strike rate of 108. Kamindu Mendes, 30 runs in 21. And of course, there was I've lost that, another wonderful innings from, I'm sorry, I've lost that one, but there was another, Madushka, and I apologize for that one. I've lost that one. We had that on the board, but nonetheless, it was a magnificent knock between Madushka and his partners, not excluding Mendes, and they rapidly got the target runs with at least 4 or 5 overs to spare. Wonderful performance from Sri Lanka. The West Indies, I will not hold this against them because the situation and the condition interrupted and caused some of the bowlers to perform not up to scratch. In particular, the left-hand spinner Walsh had to bowl with a wet ball, and I'm sure that would greatly have affected his ability to spin and turn the ball to his satisfaction. So it was a disappointing loss for the West Indies, a magnificent victory for Sri Lanka, and I will certainly look forward to the next ODI when we will have, hopefully, dry weather and no interference from rain and the conditions. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Codlin.
Thank you for your thoughts, Hall of Famer Dennis E. When we looked at the West Indies batting, Alec Atheniz was stumped by Kushalda Mendes, bowled Asaranga. Brandon King was bowled by Asaranga. Casey Carty caught for 37. Alec Atheniz 10, Brandon King 14, Carty 37. Shea Hope LBW by Vanase for 5, and Sheffin Rutherford and Ruston Chase took um, the batting to the Sri Lankan bowlers. Sri Lanka went in with one fast bowler, Mr. Brown, and so, like we rightfully predicted yesterday, they went in spin heavy. But the way Alec Athenis gave away his wicket, it's a major concern. And also, if you watch that game, you saw that Sheffield Rutherford was not comfortable batting with Casey Carty. Even with the running, he wanted to pressure the Sri Lankan fielders. Casey Carty telling him very openly in front of the opposition that he must get the ball past the fielder, else he's not going to run. What type of um, camaraderie is this in a West Indies team that is looking to do better in ODI cricket? They are number 10 in the rankings, out of the automatic qualifying for the next World Cup. They must win series to get down in the rankings so they don't play the qualifiers. With this type of attitude, how can the West Indies come back to win the last two ODIs, weather permitting?
Well, Mr. Codlin, first and foremost, the big question is what was the plans of the coaching staff and whatever hierarchy you have over there in Sri Lanka? You would want to think that they sat down with the players as a batting unit and explained to them what they were trying to achieve and how they were going to go about achieving it. Again, we are seeing a serious deficiency in the ability to run between the wickets. You stroke the ball to a certain part of the ground, and if it's to the left of the fielder or to the right, obviously if it's going straight to him, you have to really stop and be circumspect. But I don't get the feeling that the intention is there to score off every ball, if at all possible. And you watch Sri Lanka running ones and twos, and then when they get the bad ball, they put it away to the boundary. So they score much quicker. The running between the wickets, that's one, and improving on manipulating the strike and the ball in scoring areas. Casey Carty as a youngster, it was really unfortunate and sad to see him resisting. And I think on maybe at least two occasions, Rutherford was nearly run out. And he didn't seem interested in taking these singles. And although he sat down there and steadied the inning, you could see him growing in frustration. And the first six that he hit, it was a hit out of frustration.
Yeah.
And then the very next ball, he tried to repeat the stroke and took his hand off the bat, and of course he was out. And it's that frustration you see with these younger players, and you wonder, I wonder anyway, what are they being told before they go to bat? Brandon King once again slugged sweeping at a googly, which he misread to begin with and got clean bowled. Athenaeus ran down the wicket after a googly, which apparently he didn't know it was a googly, and ended up getting stumped. To me, those were embarrassing. Hope you can't say anything about him because he was playing a regular stroke, got beaten, and was adjudged LBW after not being given out at first. But those two youngsters plus Brandon King, you just have to wonder what are they thinking about when they give away their wickets like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Hall of Famer Heath, West Indies had struggled coping with ODI cricket under the coaching of Phil Simmons when we were booted out, failed to bat our 50 overs here in the Caribbean and away from the Caribbean a lot of times in difficult conditions. How do you rate West Indies, despite of the obvious deficiencies that we just pointed out, how do you rate them reaching to 38.3 overs, well in control of the game? Seems as if they would have batted out the 50 over. How much of an improvement is this from a team that a year ago, um, if they were asked to bat first, they would not make it to the 38 over, if we are remembering pretty well.
I must commend Dale, who pointed out some of the items. But before I go on, let me correct. It was Lanka along with Madushka. Lanka scored 77 runs along with Madushka's 69 runs to break the back of the West Indies bowling attack. Now, your question was basically, how do I rate the West Indies' chances? Essentially, I think the performance today showed that cricket as a team sport was certainly on display today, because when the first three batters struggled to put West Indies in the hole at 3 for 54 with very few overs gone, we looked for a team members or two to come forward and pull the fat, so-called, out of this fire that they're in. And sure enough, Rutherford, who we did believe was injured yesterday, he came forward and he played cautiously. He played with character. He played with a deep sense of, I'm here to do a job. And he certainly did that. He was supported by Ruston Chase, who at first, with his first 2 or 3 balls that he faced, he gave the impression that he was a little uncomfortable. Nonetheless, he settled well with Rutherford and they did what was required. So on the whole, as a team sport, the first 3 failed, but the others came in and steadied the ship. So I'm taking that as a positive sign that the West Indian batters or players in general may be beginning to see what is required of them when it comes to playing as a team and supporting each other.
And in ODI cricket.
In ODI cricket, yes.
Absolutely.
So, and one other point that was very, very noticeable, and Dale and yourself have pointed it out, but I think I need to underscore it. It was very obvious that a lot of those short drives to long off and long on certainly required the batters, even if they do not intend to go for 2 runs, was to make that challenge fast and put the pressure on the fielder, who in his haste could most likely overrun the ball, flop the ball, and give the possibility of additional run. But at no time did those batters make the attempt to, rush and hurry the fielders. They just lamely trotted for that single, and I thought that was a bad sign, and we hope that we won't see this again.
And that's what Rutherford was trying to let Casey Carty understand, that we have to pressure them.
Yeah.
And just that Lanka, the part-time spinner and Sri Lankan captain, was allowed to bowl 9 overs. Rutherford wanted to dismiss him out of the attack, but Carty did not feel that way. We teach mind power. Isn't this a negative on the part of Casey Carty? Is Casey Carty now begin to feel that he is a cemented member in this ODI team and he should not be dictated to? Can we look at it in that vein based on his reaction this morning to his fellow opener? And as you can see from though, and the Sri Lankan were putting feelers in the positions that he usually scoring, and you can see the open frustration. So they found out his game, and I mean, if you could pinpoint something that would have contributed greatly to the West Indies defeat today, wouldn't Casey Carty case be at the top of the pile for you?
It would be at least close to it because they certainly he and Rutherford batted long enough
Yeah,
to have made a big difference if they had scored quicker. There's no question about that. And you mentioned mindfulness, mind power. Many persons may think you're saying that this will make them better cricketers, but it's how is it going to make you a better cricketer is by your approach to the game, your mindset to the game, your awareness of the game situation, and what you're trying to do. You're planning out your innings. So the mindfulness is going to make you improve your technique, not from a practical point of view, but from a mental point of view. You know, many cricketers will tell you they go in front of the mirror and they practice their strokes, you know, make sure that the elbow is in the proper position, etc., etc. That is all part of the preparation. The other part of the preparation, which is a little bit harder to explain, is the ability to run between the wickets. Who makes the call? And you have to trust your partner that when he calls, don't turn your head and watch the ball. Take off and go to the other end because that split second you take to turn around to see if the ball is really a run, if a run is really on, it can cost you your wicket or it can cost your partner your wicket,
yeah,
his wicket. So you have to trust, and trust is part of mindfulness. Being able to trust the other person and know that this is what it is. Casey Carty is too young a player. He's 27 years old, but in terms of his how long he has been with a part of the senior team, he should not have that attitude towards, say, Rutherford, even though they might, you know, not be that far apart in age. But Rutherford is a more seasoned campaigner from the T20 into the
yeah,
50 over team.
absolutely.
So respect what he's saying because he's not telling you something negative. He's telling you something positive
Yeah,
to help the team. And even if you disagree, don't let the rest of the world know that you disagree with it.
absolutely. And the Sri Lankan were in his ears all along. And if you could see when he got out, how Asaranga was behaving because he had some words for him because they saw that there was no unity within the partnership between him and Rutherford. Mr. Heath, when Ruston Chase walked to the field that we gave a hard time yesterday, we have saw that Rutherford felt a lot more comfortable. The runs were beginning to flow, and the cohesiveness between the two was very evident, and the West Indies scoring picked up thereafter. Um, isn't this that you're looking for throughout the entire team, that they are comfortable batting together, they are for each other than what the negativities that we picked up, the lack of trust between um, uh, Casey
Carty.
Carty and Rutherford, and to some extent Brandon King and Alec Atheniz not have a long time batting together. Maybe both of them not knowing each other's strength, and that might have contributed to the lackluster performance up the top. So going forward, we have a very short time this evening. But in your final words, going forward, how do you pattern this West Indies batting, especially knowing now that we must hit back to stand a chance of moving down the rankings for a very important World Cup that comes up in 2 years' time?
Well, I believe that Carty may well have taken on within himself that mantle to be a anchor in the innings, and which is why he was overcautious. This is my belief. So it would have made a lot more sense for the two batters to communicate as they tend to do in the middle and decide between the two of them which of them would take on the aggressive role of attacking one or other bowler. But they did not do this, and this is the extent and the rationale, I believe, for why they were so lackadaisical between Carty and Rutherford. Yes, there is a lot of work to be done for the next match, and it is not yet out of reach for West Indies to take the series on a 2-1 basis, but everything will depend on how they come out, what the plan of attack is, what the decisions made by the selectors are in terms of how they go about the next match. Unfortunately, I'm normally very overcritical, I suppose, of the West Indies performance, but on this match today, I do not criticize them heavily, simply because I saw team effort and an ability. We need to tighten up on our bowling strength and our bowling attack, the way we do with our, well, if one bowler fail, we expect somebody else to pick up the slack, and that's the way we can go forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because very quickly we want to gauge your thoughts on that. But before, we'll gauge Mr. Brown first. Um, Jaden Seals, you had him in your team yesterday, Mr. Brown. You said he must play because arguably he's the most consistent bowler. Quoting you from yesterday. But today he opened the bowling 4.5 overs for 43 runs with an economy rate of 8.9 runs per over. So that's almost 9 runs and over he gave away. Azari Joseph, the vice captain, from his 6 overs, no maiden, 39 runs, picked up 2 wickets. Um, is the West Indies leading bowler in limited overs cricket when it comes to wicket, no matter how expensive he is. And so this is not surprising. He went at an economy rate of 6.5 runs per over. And Goodikish Moti, I want your thoughts, especially on him. 8 overs, no maiden, 47 runs, 3 wickets, an economy rate of 5.88 runs per over. Ruston Chase, 6 over, 42 runs, an economy rate of 7 runs and over. Aiden Walsh, the returning Walsh, the most expensive of the bowlers, 4 overs, no maiden, 37 runs, an economy rate of 9.25 runs per over. Romario Shepherd, 3 overs, 24 runs, an economy rate of 8 runs per over. Question: are you disappointed by Jaden Seals coming into this first ODI game? And second, Goody Kishmoti, is the West Indies overworking their best bowler? And will at some point him being so heavily relied on um, will become burned out? Is this a concern for the West Indies going forward?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Codlin. First and foremost, Jaden Seals had as bad an outing as a bowler could possibly have. His first over was not bad, but his second and third overs, he gave up a total of 5 boundaries. And he was either too full, meaning over pitching the ball, or he was too short. And his line was not good either. It was just not a good performance from him. I could not understand him bowling so poorly. One of the differences with many of the fast bowlers in the world is that they are able to cut their pace on certain wickets and bowl cutters, whether it's off cutters or leg cutters. So they are operating more or less at a medium pace, which makes it harder for batsmen to generate power off their bowling. I didn't see Seals trying to do any of that. He was just straight and fast. That's what he was. Alzari Joseph, as you point out, he will take wickets, but he's expensive. So I would prefer to see him being used in short bursts because maybe the longer spells is what he can't deal with. I don't know. But that's what I think where he's concerned. Moti is easy to read. He will bowl you that unplayable delivery. But that sliding ball that comes in from the off stump, a delivery like what Jededa or even his teammate Hussein has, I would like to see Moti develop another delivery, another stop ball that he can use to pin the batsmen in their crease and pin them back, because that toss up outside the off stump is only going to work but so long. And in the one day games, you do not want to go for over 6 runs and over. Once you go for over 6 runs and over, you know the other team is on target to make 300 runs easily. So you want to keep it below 6. And if the Sri Lankans could do it against our batsmen, it simply means that our batsmen are not up to par as the Sri Lankans are par to our bowlers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Moti, you mentioned overworked, and maybe people are getting too familiar with him because you know now in today's world cricket, you don't have to bat against a man to know what he's doing. They look at the games and look at your habits and what you tend to do. So he needs to vary his deliveries much more than he's doing now. He's becoming just almost automatic.
Yeah, and this might be the West Indies doesn't have any other option, so they are forced to use him in every game, and that's where the problem could be. Hall of Famer, eat your closing thoughts on in regards to the West Indies bowling today, Jaden Seals and Aiden Walsh Jr. Do you care to talk a bit about them?
Well, I think that Jaden Seals, we must remember, he has not played any meaningful cricket since the end of the CPL, where I think he may have factored in 1 or 2 games. I don't remember him being a very, not reliable, but I don't remember him having played many games in the CPL. So I think he's a little rusty. And I'm not surprised that his performance was rusty as well. Aiden Walsh, he too is suffering from the same conditions in that he has not played a great many games in the past several months, let alone year, because he's not been selected. So his efforts has not been many in terms of being out there in real match situation. Now, Dale mentioned the fact that if Sri Lanka could do this, bowl so well, why could the West Indies not do it? And I argue now that yes, Sri Lanka did it, but they bowled under different conditions. Their condition was dry. They had good, solid, hard balls with which to play with. West Indies, Moti and Walsh had to bowl with what a damp, wet ball, which would make it very difficult if you're a spinner to grip that ball and to be able to produce. So in reality, I can see that West Indies bowlers bowled in conditions that were not exactly prime for bowling conditions. And the Sri Lankans took full advantage of this. Walsh was noticeably out almost after every delivery trying to dry that ball. And that ball, obviously, you may remove the outer surface of water, but it's wet, it's damp, it's difficult to grip. So I am not overly concerned about this loss in this particular match, but I'm hoping to see what transpires in the next match, very much hoping that this will be dry condition, weather condition, wherein I can judge more clearly and more fairly the performance of West Indian bowlers in comparison to the Sri Lankan bowlers.
Thank you for your thoughts, Hall of Famer Dennis Eat and the Cricket Hall of Fame Honorary Secretary, Mr. Dale Brown. The next match and the second ODI of the 3 match series will come to you at 4 a.m. Jamaica time on Wednesday, 5 a.m. Eastern Caribbean and parts of the United States. And we will be here after the match to bring you our analysis of what goes on. We'll also be on Tuesday with our live coverage of the former Prime Minister Simpson Miller award that she will receive at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel starting at 1 p.m. Jamaica time. Until then, we thank you for joining us and we hope that you will have a very good Sunday evening. From all of us here at West Indies Cricket Development Academy, myself and the panelists, good evening to you and goodbye until Tuesday.